Alright, in this video we're going to look at individual origins as a pivot point. I'm going to go ahead and go into top view and orthographic, and I'm going to scale my cube along the X and Y so that from the top it kind of looks like a plank. Now, we're in our default median point mode, and if we rotate, it does just what we would expect. So what happens if we go to individual origins? Again, just like we'd expect, nothing seems to be different. Where this really comes in handy is when we start getting into the sub-objects of a mesh. So even a median point, when we're in object mode, we can move the center of our object. And that's an important distinction. Right now we're at the center of our mesh, and it's also the center of our object. But it doesn't have to be. This area will always be the center of the mesh, but we can determine where the center of our object is. If I were to bring my 3D cursor out here, and then set my origin to my 3D cursor, now the center of my object is actually over here, and it doesn't even have to be in the mesh. It could be way out here. If we rotate, we get a door-like movement. And that doesn't matter in object mode, whether we're in median or individual. But if we get rid of this, and let's recenter our pivot point and create a new cube. Let's tab into edit mode. And now let's subdivide this a few times. And let's start looking at some of the things that happen. I'm going to go into face mode because that's the easiest way to demonstrate the differences that we have here. I'm going to select some faces around the center of our cube, and we'll see that we are in median, which is fine, and I'm going to rotate these, and it pretty much does exactly what we would expect. If I scale them, again, it's working off the center point exactly the way we expect. What if I have faces that are not touching? And I scale. All of our faces push out from the center of the cube as they increase in size, just like we would expect. And they rotate as a single block. And this is where individual can come in handy. Let's go ahead and switch over to our individual origins. And now let's scale. All of our objects scale, like you would expect, individually. If we rotate, they all rotate individually, which can give us some fairly nifty shapes to work with. So I think you can see where, before doing an extrusion, taking a look at how you want to set your pivot point could make a pretty significant difference in how much work you have to do when you start extruding things and building on your meshes. Oops. Move that darn cursor, which I have a bad habit of doing. After all those years of Macs, I'm very bad about left-clicking in Blender. Alright, now we're still on our individual, so if we rotate with them all together, it's reacting off the fact that they're touching, and we're getting the same kind of rotation that we would get with median. And the same thing with scaling. So that helps point out some of the differences that we might have when we're using individual origins. And I'm really just kind of playing around now so you can just see some of the different things we can do. Now, we've played around with that a little bit. If we were to rotate this, so we can see and extrude, you can see that we get some pretty nifty shapes without having to do as much work with our extrusion. So it was a little bit of playing around in this video, but I just wanted you guys to really kind of see what you could do with individual origins, because like I said, this is one that you'll hop back to when you're playing with origins quite a bit. So play around with it a little bit, get really familiar with it, see what you can do, play with it in edge and vertex mode as well, and just get familiar. We got a couple more pivot points to go, so I will see you in the next video.